Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. I keep trying to. My kitchen window is like all way too bright, so I'm trying
we're waiting for a couple more people.
Trying my lighting and my.
Uh-oh. We're getting
I don't
feedback.
know. My Kim Kardashian, which is my right side. Then the dogs think I'm talking to them, so here they come.
Hold up, just a sec.
Sure.
Do you have Facebook open?
No, I closed it. Should I open it?
Yeah.
Okay. I closed it. I didn't think we wanted
weird feedback going on.
Oh, with me?
I think so.
Let me. Oh, I can't even hear it. Is it better if I turn it down?
Headphones.
Oh, Jill. Does it help? I turned it down.
Headphones up here. Or they're downstairs. Yeah, probably. Hey, Julia. We're having some sound issues.
Might not matter if Josh ends up doing all the talking.
It's not Josh. Hey, Kelly, how you doing? We're experiencing some difficulties. Let's see if that's better. Nope. Am I in the wrong hole? Well, we got a huge delay too. Oh, hold on. I know why.
Okay.
One moment, please. All right. Okay. All right. So there we go. I think I killed the problem. Somebody say something.
Okay. How's it sound now?
Hey, Julia, how you doing?
Oh, hi. Yeah,
I was having some sound issues. I think they've been resolved. I'm not sure if Insta is live anymore. I think I may have ended up killing it. I'm not quite sure. Let me see.
I think it says live. In the little corner thing on the screen.
Well, it says we're live here, but I don't necessarily think that we're live on Instagram.
Oh.
Because I'm trying to go 3 different places because that's just the way I do. I want us to get popular, ladies. I want us to get big.
I'm gonna sit back and be a passenger on this one, man, because this is there's so much all of his stuff is so great. I've been watching him for a little while, and it's just so rich.
So true.
Well, we have. I did not announce who our special guest was this evening. I'm waiting for him to. I'm waiting for him to join us. I sent him the link.
I saw Cindy E today in my drop-in class.
Oh, yay!
Oh, cool. How's she doing?
She's doing awesome. She brought her big Airedale Harper. She's doing some trial prep.
How fun!
So
good.
She's gonna watch this as a replay because she drives a couple hours to get down here. So she's gonna.
Okay, so our guest has joined us. I'm going to be letting him in here in a moment. Everybody, I want you all to welcome Michael D'Abruzzo. I hope I got that right. He can beat me up later if I got it wrong. Are you there? How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear everybody. So we're going to wait a couple minutes to get some more people to join us. And this is it. Michael is our 4th chair today. And the reason that I wanted to invite him is because Michael and I had a conversation about something that he's doing. So we're going to do a little bit of take a pause for a moment and have him explain exactly what it is that's going on, and then we'll go from there. So you ready, Michael?
Yes.
Do it.
Thank you, Linda. Well, I contacted you a couple of weeks ago over, basically legal issues in the dog training industry. I've been at it for a while, so anyone who's been following any of my stuff is I tend to always have had a problem for a long time with force-free marketing practices in particular.
Oh, we lost your sound.
Uh-oh.
I can hear him.
I can hear it. I can hear it.
I can hear it.
Please, no. This is the good stuff.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Having
Yeah, I can.
issues. Let's see.
Check. Microphone check. 1, 2, 3. Are we good?
All right, Michael, we can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
And I
you
can
cut
hear
out.
you.
Now you're back.
I can also hear Michael.
I can too.
As long as the audience can hear Michael, I don't care. But it would be helpful if I was able to
You
hear.
should probably hear him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so continue. I don't know where you were.
Okay. Can you hear me, Linda, at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you can? Okay. Well, let's see. My gripe with this started years ago. And I believe I considered myself an honest professional dog trainer that went in it for the right reasons, did my part to become educated. And like many other trainers, I entered the career with good intentions to help people. And I almost immediately was coming under attack from other trainers that considered themselves like force-free or purely positive. I mean, we're going way back until the early 2000s when this started with me. And at the time, I was very naive about it. And there was a lot of things that went on that was unfair. I mean, the actual really first thing that ever happened was there was a local shelter that contacted me because one of their employees wanted to adopt a dog that a hired trainer who was like a purely positive type of trainer said should be euthanized. So I said, I believe I could help out, with some aggression issues. And I took the dog, volunteered to take the dog, did help the dog out, did help it to get successfully adopted to the employee. But instead of like thanks or whatever, I just got retaliation, mostly letters, being dropped off at local veterinarians about that I use prong collars and e-collars and that I'm an abuser. On the local forums, all kinds of anonymous posts about what an abuser I was taking on these dogs, and completely unfounded. I've never in history of doing business ever had a client accuse me of being abusive. And that was really like and at the time, keep in mind, I was raising a family. It was I was the only breadwinner. This was my job. And that is how it all started. A few years later, I started doing like a YouTube channel, started getting a little bit of a following. And guess who was at it all the way back then? Our friend Zach George, right? Then minding my own business, I get contacted from this guy. Hi, how are you doing? I see you do protection training and I'm very interested, very friendly. Can you tell me more about your training? Do you use prong collars? Like very nicey. I wrote it back, very nice. Yes, thanks for contacting me. This is how I do it. I believe in humane training. And he comes right back at me, just so you know, if you don't denounce prong collars and e-collars, I am going to tell my followers not to give money to people like you. All right. This was my minding my own business. Right. This is minding my own business. Third, this is what put me over the edge. Again, I'm minding my own business. I'm helping people. Third was I was solicited by Victoria Stilwell's production crew, because she was doing a season of It's Me or the Dog in New York, and the production crew happened to book a job that she felt she was intimidated. It was a Presa Canario, and she was scared of the dog, basically. And, you know, through some recommendations, they contacted me because they knew I dealt with aggressive dogs, asked if I could help out. Again, at this time, I was not watching Victoria Stilwell. I was not that familiar with her. I did a little bit of research. I saw she was into positive training. I said, I can help you out. But just so you know, I use this and I use this. I felt I was being very professional and looking out. Like, you may get some, if this is your brand, you may have some issues having me on the show. And she told me, I have no problem with electric collars or prong collars if someone knows what they're doing. However, I will lose my sponsors if I say that. Okay.
Interesting.
So, yes.
That's interesting.
I swear, I believe I'm a pretty honest person. This is what she told me. I helped her out with this particular dog. She just really didn't know how to get to square one with the dog. I introduced her. To my knowledge, she was not aware of no pull harnesses. I forgot the company that was. It was the same company that was selling like the gentle leaders, and I had some of those because I used everything. I had, you know, I let my clients choose. I had halty collars, no pull harnesses. I had everything there, and I was like, try this. I was like, try this on the dog. She used it on the dog, and she loved it. It worked. It worked for her purposes. And after we shot the episode, even after everything I told her, and I was using e-collars and everything in front of her, she invited me to be one of her recommended Victoria Stilwell dog trainers, right? And this was after I told her everything.
That worked out well.
Yeah, no. I told her, again, I am trying to make a living here. And I told her, she was very nice to me. You know, she's a different person, like you know, she has like her stage presence. And I said, I decline. I basically told her, you would regret it. So you don't want me being on there. I do not represent, you know, what you show. Fine. She was okay with that. She understood. She invited me to be on her next episode still to help out, because I would do a routine, you know, for like children where I dress up in a dog outfit and act like a big goof. And one of my trainers would literally like take me and be rough with me and slam me on the floor. And then I would like bite my trainer. It was to teach children, you know, not to be rough with the dog. So she invited me back to do that. Everything went well. We parted on good terms. Next thing I know, when the season comes out, the episode comes out that I was in, and it was, to my knowledge, the producer told me it was their most viewed episode. You know, because there was a wolf that I trained, there was a pit bull doing protection training, there was the Presa Canario. They got all these ratings, and then some of the local trainers, positive trainers, I guess, started bombarding her with emails. And this is how the culture works. Why'd you have that guy in there? Even though I helped, and she denounced me publicly, right? Like on her Facebook page. In retrospect, I should have chose I didn't know about what Michael DeBruzzo does, and I should have picked a positive trainer, you know? And after that, I was like, you know what? The hell with this. I had like a $200 like laptop. You know, I wasn't like a big computer person, and I chipped away and I made some, I guess like I could call it a very bad documentary on my YouTube channel, like The Truth About Positive Dog Training, where I was like, screw you guys. It was just my like, F you know, and let me go back to work. All right.
I remember that actually. I believe I recall that.
Yeah. And you know, and it became like, I went on with my work, you know, and ultimately I would say it didn't affect me much. You know, I think if you're a trainer and like you treat your clients good and you're in it for the right reasons, like I ran my business, but I always had, like, you don't want to be running your business and always needing to be on the defense, like defending yourself, you know, and like potentially losing business opportunities and stuff like that. Right. Now we're going like, it's like 20 years later, all right? Like, I felt like I had a very successful dog training career. I'm very happy with what I've done, and I transferred over to teaching. I don't have much skin in the game. Like, it doesn't really affect me much. Even if all these tools were banned, it does not affect me much. However, it affects my students, right? And I'm not speaking for the school that I work with. I'm not speaking for any trainer out there that likes anything I do or shares anything. I'm just speaking from myself. But I'm now in the role of a teacher and a mentor, and I do not want them to deal what I had to go through.
I'm going to raise my hand for just a second because I want you to clarify what it is that you're actually doing with BOCES through New York.
Okay, well, I prefer we don't even say that name because it doesn't really matter, all right? And I do not want them to think I am speaking for them. I
know. I understand.
Okay, but what I do primarily now is I'm a CTE teacher in a program that I wish I had. When I told my guidance counselor that I wanted to be a dog trainer, I might as well have told him I wanted to join the circus. You know, like they didn't have anything for me. You really had to choose your own way, and it was not easy. You know, and I took a path that I thought was like ethical and smart, and I really tried to do my best to get to where I wanted to be. You know, I was in it for the right reasons. My heart was in it since high school, since I was a teenager. It's what I wanted to do. I had the opportunity to teach in a career school, and I took it. And I fall in love with the students. I have them for 2 years, for about half a year. And they want, a lot of them, they're there because they want to enter into a pet career. Some of them are not sure why, but I give them a very good, fair, unbiased introduction to animal training. They get assigned their own rat from birth. Like right now, we have babies that are born. They handle the baby from birth. Rats live about 2 years. They have them from birth until they're geriatric, and often we have to euthanize them during the process, through the whole process. Yeah, they know everything about this rat. They take great care of it. They're weighing it every day, and they're observing it. And they learn about welfare. They learn that when that rat is thirsty, it feels exactly like that. When it's hungry, it feels like they're scared. They really learn what is important. They learn a lot about welfare. They learn about Stephen Lindsay's version of Lima, how it's applied to dogs, but how it could be applied to any companion animal. All right, where everything they do, they're teaching. I teach them the science. I teach them the 4 quadrants. They learn how to use it, and they learn how to do it humanely to give the rat a better quality of life. So we're not sticking them in Skinner boxes. They're giving these rats names, and they're doing voice commands, and they're praising the rats. They're very, very smart, and they learn how to do things humanely. They learn about punishment, about discouraging behavior. They learn how to use it when it's going to increase the rat's quality of life. For example, if a student gets a rat, some rats have a higher instinct to like roam. Think of like huskies, right? Can't keep them in the yard, right? Some rats have an instinct where they want to jump out of their little training box and explore the table, and it's very difficult for them to work with the rat and do training with it. And therefore, the student could get frustrated, put it back, want a new rat, and now it's lesser quality of life and bond. So something simple I might teach them is, if you have a rat that wants to keep jumping out of the box, simply bump the rat back in gently. That's punishment, right? I'm teaching them how to do it. The rat stays in there for a moment, take the rat out and love it up, right? The rats very quickly learn, oh, I get bumped in, I'm staying in there, I'm going to get picked up and I'm going to get affection. Or they do their tricks. And they know that if they do it too hard, rats are very unforgiving. And this happens very rarely, if a student is a little too rough, the rat will be scared and freeze up and not want to train with them anyway, right? They have to be intuitive. They need to know the rat's body language, but they're learning their operant conditioning. They're learning their classical conditioning. They're learning about Lima, about we're trying to be least intrusive. Our plans are to be least intrusive to that quality of life, that bond between the student and their rat, and we're doing it minimally aversive. And minimally aversive does not only mean maybe the little bump they put into the back into their training box. It also means excessive hunger, because that's aversive. So they're weighing the rat, they're weighing the food. I do not want them to starve the rat to get them to do behaviors. So everything is very, very carefully done. And then of course I'm bringing dogs into the room, and then you're applying it to dogs, and they're doing agility and things like that, but it's mostly a focus actually on positive reinforcement with an unbiased discussion and dabble in how to do punishment to get them to go to the next step. Where the school I work for has an articulation agreement with SUNY Kobolskill, which means if the students do decent in my class, they have an in to SUNY Kobolskill, where they actually have an accredited dog training and management program too, a 4-year degree, where for students, I didn't have this, for students that are looking to open the doors. We didn't have this opportunity, and at least get some kind of formal education, including a lot on welfare and husbandry and vaccines and everything. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. And everyone has to deal with the thing that connected us together is, I put out a video off of the life model, Dr. Fernandez, right? Where he's wrote a paper about he has this replacement for Lima. And I'm reading the paper and I'm like, this is false. It's not even true. It's not even quoting Stephen Lindsay correctly. And it's not suitable to be putting out at the university level. Someone who's supposed to be trusted and is putting out this paper to tell someone, oh, this is what Lima means. It does not mean what's in the paper. And it's obvious. You can just if you know Lindsay's work, and I am certified through Stephen Lindsay himself to represent Cynopraxis and Lima. I know what Lima is about. It's in my curriculum. Now, suddenly, me as a teacher, am I really supposed to go along with this and say, no, Lima is not about what I'm teaching you. It is about something completely different, which is mostly to help Dr. Fernandez, right? And in the paper, he was doing an interview with Zach George, right? He's promoting himself in these purely positive circles. And when you're doing a scientific paper, one, you can't and I'm not a scientist, all right? But I have to study this a lot. You have to at this point in this field. But I do know enough. I know basic scientific method. This was not an experiment he did. However, it is a publication. And you're not supposed to misrepresent publications. He misrepresents Stephen Lindsay's work to the point where I'm not a lawyer, but I think anyone would agree would be considered trade libel. Meaning, if you are misrepresenting someone's work in such a way where it can affect Stephen Lindsay or those who are certified that say they follow him, then getting work. People go into their seminars. People go into Stephen Lindsay's seminars. He's like, oh no, this scientific paper from this university said this is no good. That's trade libel, and I was calling it out. Also, there's something called conflict of interest fraud, meaning if you're putting something out, you're not supposed to be benefiting from it. And this guy, Dr. Fernandez, he puts this out. He's a guest speaker, for Michael Shikashio and this whole, the community. he knows the deal. He's not stupid, all right? You play by their rules, you get paid speaking arrangements. He gets paid. These Karen Pryor Academy students, some of these other students, they get, he gets paid when they watch his recordings on Life Model now. In order to be a paid educator for continuing education credits, you have to agree. It's right on Karen Pryor's site. You have to agree to represent their force-free code of ethics and what force-free means, according to them. All right, which, without going into the details, completely does not align with the English definitions or whatever. And I believe, Linda, I think you were the one who told me this, is right, you can't just change words for marketing, right? You just cannot do that when you're in this sort of setting. We have Jill, you raising your hand? Do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I'm so interested in what you're saying, Mike. I'm an academic. I'm a college professor when I'm not doing the dog training. And I will tell you, I just wrote down, you have to be a scientist. You do not have to be a scientist. I've been training dogs since I was 8. I have learned absolutely zero from the scientists. Zero.
Well, and if I may,
boots on the ground. Education is about assessment. You tell me how you're measuring. Why are you're a dog trainer? Why are you not my competition in the utility ring?
Yeah.
And I don't mean you, I mean the people locally here. If you can't, I've got a lot of academic friends who can't get on the right bus at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm definitely pro-science. Like, I will say that.
Sure.
However, yes, I do not believe, scientists or dog trainers, right? And we have to work hand in hand. Like, for example, for me, I never learned a technique from a scientist that was going to necessarily help me with the client. However, I learned how to be more efficient, know what's more likely to work with the tools that I know how to use. I also learned how to communicate, what I'm doing with other trainers, because we use different lingo and stuff like that. I learned how to protect myself, right? Learned how to protect myself legally. And because besides a dog, I'm an animal lover, right? And I love my rats at that school. And there are, millions of rats that were sacrificed to learn about behavior over the past hundreds of years, and pigeons and everything else, They're amazing little animals, right?
I loved your stories about those. We have a university locally that does something similar, although you get into a senior level behavioral psychology course by permission, and 15 students, and every student gets a 3-month-old hooded rat on the first day. And they do a pretty classic Skinner box kind of let's walk through it. And the rats are then taught 5 behaviors. And at the end of the semester, they do something called the Extreme Rat Challenge, which is like a open competition, and the news media comes. It used to be called the Rat Olympics until they, no kidding, got a cease and desist letter from the actual Olympic committee. No, you can't do that. Wow. But when my daughter was young, some of the rats can't go home with their student trainers, and we adopted a number of rats out of that program. I used to tease my friends, how many Olympic gold medalists do you have living in your house, right? I have several. But that was a fun program. But I used to go in and guest lecture about how rats are not dogs, and rats are not humans, and dogs are not humans. And what do you need to know about the role of language? Because as an academic linguist, We don't get to pick how language gets used. We follow language users around and write it down. And I think there's an awful lot of practical, Lyndon, Julie and I have talked about this, practical dog knowledge that the scientists run around trying to capture and then promote as though not only did they discover it, but they invented it.
Yeah.
And then they commercialize it, and that sort of closes the circle from kind of where you started.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Linda, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I basically, I always have something to say, man. Stream of consciousness.
Why we love you.
Yeah, but basically, one of the things although we really don't have a lot of time to address this particular issue tonight, we will be looking at it in the very near future. But there was a recent study done that was hosted by Ivan Balabanov on use of e-collars, right? So, and one of the things, the problem that I have with what they're couching or framing as science these days is these owner surveys, right? And for years, it has always disturbed me. I am not a scientist. I'm not a scientist by training, but I am a keen observationalist, right? And all of this science is considered anecdotal evidence based on science, based on the definition of science. So they're trying to frame this as being science, but then when you present them with 52 years, in my case, of anecdotal evidence, they're like, that doesn't count. That's not science. So it can only be one or the other. It cannot be both. When there is nothing in all of the studies that are currently being, from the time I started reading studies back in the 90s, there's no real structure to these things. They're all basically agenda driven. We want to prove a specific point. So therefore, that's the point that we're going to prove. There's no hypotheses. There's no theories. There's just, this is what we want to do because it serves our agenda.
Yes, definitely. And I
problem.
Yeah, I definitely find the best studies that I refer to are much older ones.
Yeah.
That were done like in the 60s, 70s.
Well, I don't know what dog groups you frequent. I actually had abandoned 100% of them several years ago, and I was pulled back into a couple of them just because my name was mentioned on a few occasions. So I tried to distance myself because they make me insane. But we get a bunch of people asking questions, and for any of us who have been in this trade for any length of time, realize there were huge gaps in the science when it came to the study of dog behavior. There was fruit fly behavior and bat behavior and wolf behavior and camel behavior, but no dog behavior. That didn't happen until fairly recently in our lifetimes. And one of the questions that I recently heard was, it talked about puppies in development. And I'm like, Scott and Fuller, 1962. And people are like, who's that? I'm like, they wrote the definitive tabula rasa on puppies. And this should be required reading for anyone who calls themselves a dog trainer. And it's the same with Lindsay's books. I waited 2 years for his third volume. I put myself on the mailing list, paid them $100 and some in advance for the third volume of those books. And it's like, if people buy them for no other reason than to go through all of the bibliographies that all of the things that he has listed are the quintessential source of everything involving dogs and dog behavior since the written word.
Yes, it is a crime that his books are not. They're actually purposely like hidden. It's a crime that these are not recommended reading or required reading.
They used to be until they came out with the third volume.
Yeah, it's and I didn't start reading his work until it's like 2017. I don't know how many years ago it is. And it's because no one stressed it to me. The books were kind of expensive, and I was like, all right, what am I going to really learn from this? I was pretty arrogant enough about my training at the time. I was getting results. But I was also very busy trying to like make sense of things, have like scientific references, because I was doing mentorships and stuff like that. And when I read his book, after I thought that I was so brilliant for like finding some like connections between like, oh, look at this, in a study here and study there. And then I picked up this book and I was like, holy cow, he already did all of this like years ago, like way, way better than I could ever do if I spent the next decade trying to do it. The guy is a genius. And he's passionate and he's devoted. And he told me himself that some of those pages in those books took him like one page, sometimes took him like 3 days to do, because he's so precise. He does it for the right reasons. And the stuff that is in there is incredible. It is incredible. And Lima, I'll try not to go on to a big tangent, but
no, that's why you're here. Go off on a tangent.
Yeah, like the concept of Lima is, it's part of a competency criteria for a trainer who is expected to know about dog behavior and know about different ways to change behavior, and also be sensitive to creating a quality of life for that dog and creating a good bond between the owner and the dog. And you're not really expected to understand how to use Lima unless you put all this stuff together. And he really puts it all together, like in the last pages of the 3rd volume, right? Yep. And so what happens, we have a big bait and switch, right? Like these organizations like the IAABC, like, oh, that's a nice ring to it, right? But this is too complicated. We don't require our trainers to learn all this stuff, right? They just need to go by our code of ethics. So they do a bait and switch and change it to Susan Friedman's like hierarchy, which is like a couple of pages of information based on surveys of what people find is the most humane way to do behavior changes with children. Not necessarily what works or what's really most aversive, or all these other things. It is primarily based on surveys to parents of what sound, and think of how nice that fits, all right? Because it's definitely going to work well with the public, because it's not based on all this stuff. It's based on what people want to really hear, right?
What they feel.
And I'm not against it for the non-professional, right? Like if Zach George wasn't such like a booger, right? Like I would send all the teeny boppers to go to his YouTube channel to like, they're not going to mess up, you're not going to, to work with their puppies, right? However, and that's kind of how I feel about like this, like the Susan Friedman hierarchy. It's like, it is a nice, safe little thing if you know nothing, but it's not a competency criteria to measure yourself by as a professional trainer. So they just completely downgraded like all the standards of what a trainer is expected to be. And they have been in such a fight amongst each other, these groups, to be the most self-righteous. It has now become, they back themselves into a corner where they're not even allowed to use punishment at all, trying to one-up each other. Now they have really put themselves in a dilemma, because you cannot, you by definition, you cannot even have obedience without some sort of consequence, right? Where in literature or anywhere is obedience associated with doing it if you want to, all right? So now we're at this spot where legally, all right, and I want to make this clear, like I'm not into arguing. I'm done defending myself, right? I have nothing to lose. I don't have a dog training business. I'm just trying to protect the future going forward. Everyone has been so defensive. And when you look at this stuff, when you really look at what they're doing, I was like, why is no one being the aggressor here? All right. Why are they the ones like being so always putting the ethical trainer on the defense and no one's coming back at them and saying, you cannot do this. You can't do this in any other field, in any other career that has any sort of regulations. Like, why are you allowed to do this? When I put out that last video about Dr. Fernandez, based on, that's whistleblowing, that's legal. I mean, like, it's very easy to be like, look, no, he said this. Stephen Lindsay says this. He wrote no conflict of interest, but he's getting paid for doing this. Like, it's very easy for me to prove this is true, right? Now, I had an IAABC member and Karen Prairie graduate with all their letters.
The school. Peter, was that Peter Lynn?
No, Peter Lynn. No, Peter Lynn. Peter Lynn got screwed over by them. No, a member of IAABC and Karen Prairie Academy contacted the school I worked for and said that I'm out there saying false information, and being fraudulent, and I'm a danger to the students. So basically trying to like hurt my employment, saying that
that's actionable.
Yes, it is. It's tortious interference. Like, yeah. It really, really is. And you know what? And like I said, so this just adds like another thing to the list where it's like, leave me alone. Like, all, I got called in, to a meeting, and I got the letter. They kind of my supervisor kind of giggled at it, because it seemed kind of crazy and insane, the letter, like me being called all these bad things, because they do know me. Matter of fact, they sponsored me to go get Lima certified from Stephen Lindsay, so their students have a better education, that's aligned with making good decisions for the welfare of the animal. And then they get this, and I was like, and they trusted me, they trusted me that it was false, all right? And they were just like, just don't use our name, all right? Just keep us out of it, all right? Which they don't want to really deal with that, but I don't have to deal with it. Yeah, and that's definitely actionable. And you know what? I don't care about the person that sent me, all right? Again, it's like, I call them boogers, right? Because it's like, if you have like a virus, you could keep wiping off boogers out of your nose, all right? The virus is like the organizations, right? That person means nothing to me. I wipe that booger out of my nose, another one's just going to be there, okay? And so Karen Prairie Academy, the International Association of Behavior Consultants, that's, in my opinion, who's contacted them, because those are the letters she's putting after her name to show that she's qualified to make these statements about me. Are they going to do anything about that? All right. I go to the IABC and they say, if you report someone, you want us to do an investigation, you have to promise to not say anything about it to anybody else. That's it. And we already know how they treated Peter Lynn. I'm not doing that. Like, I'd rather just say, this is what they do. What are they going to do? They're not going to really do anything. All right. And they're trying to go into other countries and be trusted by the people. Certify trainers.
There's a couple of facts about the IAA behavior, whatever they are, and the APDT. I am a member of NADOI. I am not speaking on behalf of NADOI at this time. I'm speaking as an individual. So get that out of your head, people. Not you guys, but the people who are ostensibly watching. Here's the thing. Of the three primary organizations, NADOI is the smallest, but it is comprised, all of its members are certificates, which means that they had to pass a rigorous process in order to become members. The APDT has the largest number of members, almost none of whom are certificates, right? So, and their certificates are basically done through the CCPDT. Sounds like I'm talking about Mother Russia, all these freaking acronyms, I can't stand it. But basically, all their certification is through the CCPDT, and they have all the different, knowledge assessed and practicality and all this other nonsense, which is great, but none of it reflects actual training, right? Actual physical. You have to have some case studies or something like that when you get further along in the training. But the IAA BC, for the most part, and there's no numbers for this, none that can be verified, is for the most part, certification is supposed to be a fairly rigorous process, but there's very few certificates for the most part. And in the conversation that you were having with Mr. Lynn, which was very good, by the way, I'm actually going to put a link up because I want people to go and watch it, has the smallest number of certificates of all of them. And the thing is, though, is they make it look like it's this big thing. We are behavior counselors for ducks, and we're behavior counselors for horses, and we're behavior counselors for goldfish. Oh yeah, and by the way, we do dogs too. But the thing is, though, is it's like, and I know I have friends who are members. I do not object to them. One I know is an excellent trainer. But there's a lot of stuff coming out of there that gives me pause for concern because of the overwhelming evidence that they're being usurped by the professional guild. Okay. And I have some serious problems with this, and I'm not afraid to say it. Bunch of middle-aged women who have failed relationships with humans, who think that they can control their lives through the control of their animals. And God forbid anyone that tries to hurt them, because they've been hurt enough in their lifetimes. And that's exactly what it looks like to me. Right. And the thing is as hard as that is to hear, these are the ones who have someone who knows someone who has a senator's ear. And the one act, and I apologize to my Nadoy brethren. I have, yeah, right, here we go. I have been, remiss in some of my duties as their legislative chair, because I have a lot of things going on in my own personal life, of whom, the folks who know me know what's going on. But basically, it's like every month, several times a month, I'm going to the AKC legislative links. I'm going to the Sportsmen's Alliance legislative links and looking for stuff. And invariably, the same legislation is being promoted in all these different cities. And it's been failed every single time. But pretty soon, they're going to be able to mount enough steam to be able to push some of this stuff through. And it's the same. I've shared it with Jill. I'm pretty sure Julia's seen it too. I can't remember the outfit, but there's the chick down in North Carolina, Legs. Her acronym, I can't remember her name. She was actually a speaker at Nadoy's online conference this last year. Kim something, I can't remember. But basically, a lot of this language basically endorses only people who are certified through the IAABC or certified through the CCPDT. They completely ignore the IACP. They completely ignore NADOI, both of whom have much more rigorous certification processes than they do, because it actually requires that you prove you know what you're talking about. And, it's like it kind of is, it's really very scary that they kind of like lob these bombs into these different communities to see what flies. Illinois, New Jersey twice, possibly again a third time this legislative season. Massachusetts has seen some activity. Connecticut, Florida, San Francisco. So they're hitting, most of these places that they're hitting are big cities with largely Democratic populations or Democratic voting blocks. And that's not, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm none of that. But basically it's the demographic they're appealing to are people who have never owned pets for the first time, or middle-aged women who have empty nest syndrome and need something to love. And it's dangerous. Yeah. And one of the conversations that I had with Michael when we spoke a couple weeks ago, which was because of Marlena Ruiz, who is the legislative liaison through IACP, urged me to get in touch with him and talk about this, because this is something that we need to watch as part of our obligations to the organizations that we belong to. And one of the things that I mentioned to him, and this is something that has actually been able to help defeat this legislation everywhere it's been proposed, is the fact that they cannot go in and say, well, you can't train dogs anymore because you have to pass our certification process, and you only have X number of years to do that. And the thing is, though, is that's a big thing. And this is what most governing bodies don't want to face, is a large class action restraint of trade lawsuit. And the bottom line is there's going to come a time, and I'm retirement age. I don't know how many years I have left in the trade. The way things are going, who knows? It may be a lot sooner than I think. But ultimately, the legacy that we leave as trainers to the new crop of trainers that are coming up it has to be in some way to not defend what they do. And I hate the term balanced trainer. I've despised it since I heard it 20 freaking years ago. But there has to be a way to help support them to be able to combat this successfully. And I think that the Steve Lindsay's Lima principle is absolutely one of those ways, because it's like Michael said, it's actually a way to be able to measure competency. And that's the other thing the fact that in all honesty, why Mr. Lindsay hasn't gone after them legally at this point is just stupefies me. It really does. Because he's got so much legal grounds with which to go after them lawfully and say, you took this, you bastardized it, you tried to make it something that it's not. And in the process, you're digging my name through the dirt, and why?
Linda, there's so much of
he was the APDT's darling until the third book came out.
Well, there's so much of what you're talking about, and Mike too, that has really nothing to do with dogs at all, and is all about it's turf wars, it's ideological, it's human to human. Again, this is my academic stuff, but it's meta, it's language above anything that's happening on the ground. You and Julia know, after I spoke at the 2006 IACP conference, I ended up, by a series of weird circumstances, on a consulting contract with MPH Entertainment, right, who created the original Dog Whisperer. And a colleague in California and I wrote, for about 18 months, a little bit longer, a series of white papers to provide talking points to the MPH partners who know their industry, right? They're entertainment people. But they don't know what the talent is doing. They don't know what Caesar is doing. They don't understand really what's happening, yet they need talking points from an informed perspective so that they can generally do one of two things. Explain to Procter & Gamble why they should advertise Eukanuba dog food products on the program and how the demographics map, and push back on Caesar's critics, most of whom come from inside veterinary medicine, because it's a turf war. Veterinarians aren't dog trainers. There's no evidence of that. But it was about controlling the narrative in such a way that there was one expert, and it was your local veterinarian, and that's it. And we saw some of the email exchanges and some of the conversation in private spaces that the veterinarians were having about Caesar. It was pretty yucky. But I think that sort of dynamic in the large, right, in this larger sort of social, cultural, professional frame, is the same thing that, in some important ways, that all of us have experienced when this happened to me not too long ago, where the family in the $2 million home calls me because I'm the only person in town who will talk to them if they have an aggression problem. And the dangerous dog sign's already been hammered into the front yard, and I arrive and we sit down, and I have a little history form that's kind of adapted from is it William Bradley? Anyway. And so one of the questions I ask is, where does the dog sleep? Which is a roundabout way of getting at some other things, right? And the woman says, he sleeps in the bed with us. This is a little terrier mix, about, I don't know, 25 pounds.
Of course he does.
Yeah. And the husband turns to her and he's got his finger in her nose and he's practically tapping her chest. Well, that didn't happen until your mother came and the blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
And I just started packing up, putting stuff in my bag. And I said, this is not a dog training problem. Y'all need couples counseling.
Mhm.
And when somebody figures out who's going to be, you're using your dog as a pivot point for who has power in this relationship. I'm thinking to myself, I can help you solve those Dr. Phil style problems, but I want to charge the Dr. Phil style prices, and I can't get them in this
Right.
because people don't think that's what they're signing up for.
No, they don't. They don't.
I think the language of it, and again, this is me, the academic, but the language of it maps. It's the same in the small as it is in the large. And it comes down to, from my perspective, assessment. How do you assess learning? How do you know when you're done? How do you know when you lost those 20 pounds so you can go to your high school reunion? How do you know when you're ready to run the marathon? Maybe the way you know you're done remodeling the kitchen is when you just run out of money. But there was somebody at some point with a blueprint. And if it's true, Neil deGrasse Tyson said this once, that data, and this goes back to the science question, data should give way to fact. And from facts, we extrapolate knowledge. And when education meets experience, we have wisdom. But if you're a professional, you should be able to go backwards through that process. If I ask you, why this piece of equipment and not this one? You should be able to use. I wouldn't take lessons from anybody who couldn't do this. I wouldn't go to an attorney who couldn't do this or a physician who couldn't do this. To say, here's my experience and my education coming together. Here's my wisdom on the subject. It comes from a certain kind of knowledge that rests on fact, extrapolated from data. And even if that data is just training tens of thousands of dogs,
That's a lot of data.
50 years, that's a lot of data. Did it get into a scientific peer-reviewed journal? No, but that's problematic on the face of it, because let's not even talk about academics and peer review, and let's just not.
Well, and that's it's interesting that you talk about that, because one of is in this area in particular, and I would imagine in larger metropolitan areas it's fairly similar. But we have the county that I live in does not, but county adjacent to me does have right. These dangerous dog boards are not peopled by trainers. They're peopled by people who are not trainers. They're lawyers, they're veterinarians, they're victims, they're past victims and legislators. There are no trainers. There's like one trainer, and actually I think in Baltimore County at one point the trainer position rotated every couple of years, but the rest of the board stayed primarily the same, right? So the vast majority of dogs. Now I get it. I'm not. I don't think that Suburban Sally needs a 7-year-old freshly neutered pit bull pulled off the street. But by the same token, not every dog's a killer, and not every dog deserves to be euthanized. So there's concerns for that. But I think that the vast majority of seats at the table are being populated by people who have no business there. They still need to be at the kids' table. And one of the things, and these two ladies know me, they've known me for many, many years now. I say this a lot. It's like I've been down in Annapolis tramping through the halls of our legislative process, and I didn't see you there. So no one gets to say anything about anything unless they actually have blood in the game. And the thing is it's like, and Margot Woods used to tell me this all the time, because it was she and I and Pam Loeb, kill, doggy, kill. If she's out there, she'll know. The three of us went down to Annapolis one time. We were working, and Margot had us walking through all the halls and introducing ourselves to all the Congress things and so on and so forth, because that was what you did. You made yourself, to take a day and drive down there and put your name on the roster to speak in front of Congress and all of these things. And nobody wants to do that anymore. They want to sit there and write their little letters and get their, what do you call it? The little laminated, the wristband, that says that you spent your $2 for someone else to do something. That's not the way this works. So, and that's part of the conditions that I have for people, is the whole NIMBY thing. Somebody ought to do something. Well, it's us right now. It's Michael, it's me, it's Jill, it's Julia, it's people like a smaller number. But the one thing we do have, and Michael brought this up, no complaints of abuse. And that's a powerful voting block.
Yeah. Yeah, and primarily those that are pushing legislation are, it's not pet owners. it's these organizations. It's technically a very small percentage of the population that is pushing an agenda without really a lot of resistance and real feedback from the public. But there's plenty of propaganda being fed to the public, which is really one of my main goals, is to build the case for the Fair Trade Commission, which what we have going on. It's like, I was very easily able to pull up dozens of cases that you just like switch the titles of of these companies, and it's the same thing going on. It's it's misleading marketing going on. It's not true. You cannot do that. You cannot you cannot say things that are not true from a marketing perspective to give yourself an unfair advantage. And there's a few different ways that's going on. There's really two things that are a problem. One is just this claim that that like force-free dog training is just more effective, which it is not. There is no proof of it, and it's actually pretty easy to prove if you give certain criteria. It's
single trial learning event.
Yeah, it's the other way around. And then I just wrote something about invisible fence systems. Like I say, this is a very simple example. Like, you don't even really need scientific studies. You just have to look at the world around you, and no one can explain otherwise. All right. Like, there's probably, I estimated there's easily over 1 million active invisible fence systems, in the world. And they work, and it's pretty standardized for the most part. Most people train them up one of two different methods, that I know of that work. And you do not get complaints about these. The dogs, you don't get complaints about animal welfare with dogs that are hanging out in the yard with their owners. You have the same thing going on to help with welfare of like livestock and stuff, so they're not just penned up, where they can have freedom in the field and interact with other animals. There's no one complaining about that because there's no money in it. No one's trying to make money. And like I said, the science, I know there's, there was this new Clive Wynne study that came out. I've been helped them out with it. I like that they did that. I know reading it, it's probably very difficult to have any sort of study within the real world where you cannot break it apart and say this isn't controlled and there's this and this. It's not, there's so many factors. However, what I like about it is now, okay, if force-free community is going to now open up and start scrutinize it, okay, now we have to look at the studies that they're pointing to. Now, that being said, the science has been there. It is there. Like, it's been there for decades, all right? Like, we know all about, it's not about punishment, all right? It's about avoidance what trainers are doing, you know? There's no trainer whose goal is I'm going to just teach you how to punish your dog when it's doing something wrong, right? Trainers have goals, you know. Our goal is, you know, the purpose of punishment is so you don't have to punish. They're all doing avoidance conditioning. Invisible fence is the easiest, simple example to give someone who doesn't understand, right? But you take that concept of, you know, what we call signaled omission punishment conditioning, which is what it really is, right? It's punishment is used in many different forms, but that's what trainers are doing, you know, give it a signal and the dog only gets punished if it doesn't do a behavior. The conditioning means there's a process where the dog understands this, all right? So then they never have to get it unless they choose to, right? And it works. The studies have been there for ages in labs with all different types of animals that this works and there's no side effects. And now within like the past, 15 years, we have the neuroscience that shows what's happening in the brain. And guess what? The stuff, you know, that they were pointing to in like 1975 that were like, these animals consistently avoid this aversive, and we don't understand why without any sort of reinforcement, they keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. There was theories, but now they know. They know there's dopamine spikes going on in the brain. They know it is actually rewarding for animals that when there's something aversive in their environment, that if they know the signal and they can avoid it, they like that feeling. They feel in control, all right?
They feel accomplished.
Yeah, it's confidence building, right? That's why we're not scared driving our car. We know what these red lights are for. We know what this is. And common sense will help us, right? Like, we're much less scared of these crazy, scary places in the world when we know the rules, but we need someone to teach it to us too before we get hit by a car crossing the street, you know, jaywalking in Manhattan, right? So it's common sense, really. Like, it's really around us, and the science is there. I don't believe you need any new studies for it. You know, so the issues with the marketing is, it is not, it's the science is there. A gas pedal is not better for stopping the car than the brake pedal. All right. It doesn't really need to be explained, but the science is there. And also, so not only are they doing unfair marketing saying this works better, and it's in the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior statement that this works better. So veterinarians do not send anyone to these obedience trainers, right? Obedience instructors. So they're basically against, you know, anyone who's a member of National Association of Dog Obedience Instructors. But that statement is targeted right at you guys. It's at obedience instructors. It is a marketing tactic to like bring them the business, these new veterinary behaviorists, and then they funnel in and they work with these uneducated people that are graduates of like the equivalent of Doogie Howser's medical school, Victoria Stilwell, all right? Like TV, someone who is a trainer on TV now has an unaccredited school. We're going to recommend those people, all right? And this is really silly, right? It's silly that we even have to really talk about it. And then once you examine what these trainers that say punishment is bad, what they're doing, they think it's okay to just rename things, right? Like I showed Victoria Stilwell how to use a no pull harness. That's a no pull harness. Don't you pull. She made her own version. Her version is actually even more aversive, and she changed its name to the purely positive. I forgot, like a very nice name. And because the name is nice, it's no longer used to stop behavior. And the same thing happened with the gentle leader, right? When these devices first came out, I was working in an animal hospital as a tech when I first saw these things. And it was marketed as it mimics when the mom bites down on the muzzle and you get
nonsense.
Yeah, and now it's the gentle leader. And even though we're twisting the dog's neck, and it's not punishment. No. Because don't you see the name? It's gentle, all right? So why won't? But we're not gonna. Let's take the prong collar. Just call it the gentle necklace, right? Call it the gentle necklace. Now it's no longer punishment here, all right? And that's basically what they're doing, and it's easy to show that. It's like you don't need to be like a scientist. It's just no one is addressing it from that angle. We're busy, and I don't expect people, like, we shouldn't have to do that, right? Like, dog trainers, they're trying to run their businesses. They're trying to help people. Like, they don't think they should have to be going out there and defending themselves or make an initiative to just make it stop, like, just make it go away. And it's, if you put your mind to it, like, I personally think, like, things have to make sense on paper for me. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm a very technical person. If I'm training an animal, it has to make sense on paper first, all right, before I try it. If you're building a house, you have to have blueprints. It has to make sense. To stop this silliness, makes sense on paper to me. Like, I map it out, and it was like, how does this not work? You just actually have to really do it. People just have to get together, find common ground, to create a fair market for dog trainers, so that they can help the public without being blocked, and also be free to be able to get an education without that education. There's a lot of these trainers, and I'm not against, like, there's a lot of members, like, graduates, because I took down a video for reasons, not because I'm scared to have it up, because I think it's better to have it down right now for various legal reasons. But in that one video that I had up, I clearly said that I think most trainers that went to Karen Pryor Academy, the Gene Donaldson School, Victoria Stilwell, I think they're victims. I think they're victims of educational fraud.
I believe you're correct. They're victims.
And then they go out, this army, and remember, they just invested all that money, all right? They don't want to, that's some serious cognitive dissonance, going on over there, is they are going to be saying what they were taught. And that's why that whatever we want to call her, that sent this letter to the school, I really don't care. If for some reason that person is watching, I don't care, right? I care about why you think, it would be really stupid. Like, no one in their right mind would write that letter if they thought what they were saying was false, all right? That person is saying this stuff because they think it's true. If, again, things have to make sense to me on paper. I didn't, like, why would someone do that? It was like, this is like throwing me a meatball, all right? A legal meatball, all right? But like I said, I'm not interested in wiping the snot out of my nose, right? I want to get rid of the virus, right? I want a vaccine against the virus, right? And it just needs to be done, right? Like, it needs to be done. I think NADOI, IACP should definitely come together and be like, this is hurting your future. If you have kids, if you're people you are mentoring that you think want to take after you, it's going to hurt their future. You're entering a marketplace where you have the market against you in a way that is unacceptable by law. You can look it up. They're not allowed to do this. And we need organizations to, like, sort of step up and come together and protect the trainers. Not only that, e-collar manufacturers should be,
They've
of course,
been very reluctant to come forward. I mean, the e-collar, I'll be honest with you, one of the frustrations that I've had for years, and a lot of us have, I know that Robin McFarlane is working with, I believe,
PETT.
Gun Dog Supply and a couple of other things, but basically it's like the e-collar manufacturers themselves are very reluctant to come forward with any kind of funding for actual scientific studies or even anecdotal evidence of their own, because they would have volumes. I mean, they sell millions of units. And it's really, really difficult to be faced with, it's okay if you sell our product, but we're not going to support you when you do. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and the other thing, e-collars have a bad rap because there's a lot of people who don't know how to use them correctly. And I am not opposed to, if you're using an e-collar, you have to go through a structured program to learn how to use it correctly, or you can't use it. I'm okay with that. I really am. The other thing is, and this is one of the, I kind of lost my train of thought, but one of the things that you had said about how, the lawfulness of this, the one thing that is starting to strike me over the course of like maybe the last 5 years is I see a degree of frustration amidst the not positive only trainers that is starting to achieve a level of frustration where they're basically starting to fight back. I'm kind of seeing a swing of the pendulum going in the opposite direction now, which is a good thing. But then we are faced with all kinds of horrid allegations of, well, not even allegations, factual accusations of abuse, especially from individuals in the hunting dog community, which really disturbs me because that's kind of my community. And, retriever trainers, there's a guy down in South Carolina who was just seen brutalizing a dog a couple months ago. And, it's not about the individual. It's always never about the individual. It's always about the equipment that the dog is wearing when the abuse occurred. Yeah. And it's like we start seeing more and more of this legislation being pushed to ban tools when instead we have all of these things in place to actually prosecute the individual that's responsible for the abuse. And nobody wants to actually take those steps and say, oh, hold up, wait a minute. It isn't the vehicle, it's the driver. So we have to, otherwise every car on the face of the planet would be banned. They kill more people than people are abusing dogs. Doctors kill more people than hospitals kill more people. And the thing is these things still exist. The problem that we have as a community is we're too afraid to persecute our own. And I find that problematic. I really do. Because if we don't, as a community, what's going to happen is these things are going to be taken away from us, and someone else is going to be writing those laws for us.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just, Linda and I have had this conversation. I think Julia might have been in on it too. A few years ago, in this community, the no-kill people wanted to leverage city tax dollars to sustain feral cat colonies, right, all over the place. The trap, neuter, release, for instance. And I prepared a little statement before I went down to the town hall meeting where community members got to weigh in. And my thought was, and I think this goes to Linda's point about we need better framing, we need better metaphors.
Yeah.
And what I said was, I think that smokers and pet owners have a lot in common, to the extent that the people who don't share our personal proclivities don't like what we leave behind. So what do smokers leave behind? Secondhand smoke, the endless cigarette butts out the car window or piled in the street, whatever. What do dog owners leave behind? Loose dogs, dog bites, dog poop. I might not have been as polite as that. What do cat owners leave behind? To the best that I can tell, just more cats, right? I mean, this ridiculous number of cats. But what happened to the smokers when they failed to realize that non-smokers have rights too? They didn't lose their right to smoke, but they lost its public access. And when I moved to this town 28 years ago, if you'd have gone into one of the university downtown bars on the strip and told everybody there that the day would come when I'd get to stand inside in the warm heat and they'd be standing outside in the snow smoking, I think they'd have taken a collective puff and turned around and puffed me right out onto the sidewalk. But that's where they are now. And in my community, and I've heard other people say this, speculate that the proliferation, the popularity of dog parks has the potential to be a certain kind of reservation system, as in Indian reservation.
Mm-hmm.
We drive you off the common land onto secured spots, do what you're going to do.
It's already happening. It's happening in the horse community. It's happening in the dog community. There's colleges who basically have dorms that are designed specifically for people bringing animals to, and so in one direction, dogs, animals in general are becoming more a part of the fabric or the landscape because people are starting to choose not to marry, not to have children, but to have pets instead, which, okay, great. That's fine. But in a situation where my animal is limited to a postage stamp because everyone else around me has chosen to do bad things or handles their animal poorly, it's just like anything else. Why am I suffering the consequences of someone else's stupid act?
Well,
right?
and then on the ground, right, I have people who say to me in my classes, why do you care about how I live with my dog?
Because it impacts everything we do.
We're all painted with the same, we're all tarred with the same brush.
Exactly.
I literally had somebody say that to me in an evaluation the other night.
Yeah. Why do you drive on your own side of the little white line, you dork? Right?
And I've just been very quiet during all this because all I'm going to do is just agree with everything and just offer you examples of the same crap that everybody's dealing with. But yeah, we talked about that a little bit the last time we got together about this paradox of dog friendly, except it's not for friendly dog. It's completely backwards. Dogs who actually should have public access because they're under control and mannerly and they're being handled by responsible people who are self-aware and don't have the mentality of a 5-year-old. Well, we can't bring those dogs to those places because everybody else is out there with their wild, unbridled maniac dogs who just want to say hi, and then the rest of us suffer. And usually at the other end of that leash is somebody who is told that using, well, actually, I didn't tell you guys this the last time we talked, last Sunday in my drop-in class. My class was out in our neighborhood, just an example of this, and we were rushed by a pair, and the woman who owns these dogs is a lovely person, and I actually felt really badly for her. But she has a pair of small dogs on harnesses with flexi leads, and she came around the corner and her dogs blew up in exactly the right angle to take her off of her feet. She hit her head on the street. There's still blood where she fell down a week ago.
Oh my God.
One of the dogs, I didn't even tell you guys this. It's been that week. One of the dogs ran away, started running up in my class. I had to step on the flexi lead, pick up the dog. Dog wanted to nuke me. And that's who we see in.
It's not funny, Jill.
It's not, except I can't believe that hasn't happened 5 other times because they live around the corner. They're lovely people. I felt terrible. I genuinely felt badly. But Jesus, you live around the corner from a dog training place. And like you see us walking these dogs, not on harnesses and flexi leads. But that is that I feel is who the majority of people are that we see out there. And to take it back to the everything we're talking about that Michael is talking about, a lot of these people, if they're getting information at all, they're getting it from these channels that have a specific angle that I don't think is particularly altruistic. Maybe they tell themselves they are, but they're hearing it from their vet that this piece of equipment is dangerous. They're hearing it from, their friend who works at a daycare. No, you can't go to that trainer because they're mean. And you can just trace it all the way back upstream to what's humane and what's not, what's positive, what methodologies, what modalities are humane and ethical. And, as Michael has said, and why I'm a fan is, you're saying what a lot of us think, and you're, brave enough to say it. And I mean, all of us have said it to some degree, but you're right. There has to be some sort of mobilization besides us, just because we live in it. We're eyeball deep in this stuff.
And did any of you happen to see the article in the New York Post today about dog walking injuries?
My husband sent that to me. I haven't read it yet.
300 study shows. I haven't read the study, but dog walking injuries surged 342% since 2001.
Wow.
What does that seem to correlate with? So we're talking about people getting knocked over by their pulling dogs, broken bones,
harness and
like
flexi lead.
342%. Could we be having a reduction in true obedience? The dogs know how to, and you will see, like, from the, doing a little bit of lurking around, like with, UK statistics, you're going to be seeing very similar sort of things, increases in dog bites and stuff like that. Even as the Crufts, I always like to watch like the Crufts little like police dog demo. And on YouTube, it's pretty cool because you can go back to like the demos from like 2016 to 2017 to now. And 2017, you see something pretty impressive, right? Like the police officer has control over the dog lets go, they're escorting. Past few years, you see police dogs that can't get the dog off anybody, and they drag the dog backstage to choke the dog off. Or they have very highly rehearsed like routines where that they can barely pull it off in a controlled practice setting, never mind in the real world. And you see this total decline in control and safety. And this is a concern, right? It is. And I thank Linda for this too, for really putting me on that angle, because I came into it mostly from the dog trainer's perspective, because that's where I come from. Secondarily, with like, this is not right what you're saying to the consumer, but how many pet owners are affected by what is going on? Like, how many pet owners are getting injured because they paid money thinking that they were going to get some sort of obedience or some sort of control or some sort of solution, but instead they're getting a talking to, about what is the righteous thing to really do and how to manage their dog, and to not really solve the problem. How many are having their dogs euthanized or go back to a shelter or something like that? And I know when I was running my business, it was very common to have trainers that have first paid money with some place to not really give them what they wanted. And I know this is common with a lot of trainers. And this is what happens. Like, if this happened, when I was running a business, I would take a history. I would take note where they sent their dog. And you know what? I would fix the problem. Okay, what did they do? Let me work with it. Now what happens is if you get someone with a dog, if they did any sort of training anywhere with any sort of bozo whatsoever, or did it themselves, they go to a veterinary behaviorist, and the veterinary behaviorist can't fix the problem. What do? Drugs. They don't refer out, they euthanize the dog. And then they say, oh, this is proof we could not fix this dog because the dog was exposed to punishment.
Right.
And then they use that as, because they just made up that correlation, they use it in their literature, that view. And that was my issue with Karen overall.
I tried everything thing where they tried absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I recently had a person in here who came to us, but had already made an appointment with a behaviorist for a large breed dog. that she was having a lot of trouble with around other dogs. The dog genetically wasn't probably the best dog to be in this home. We made a lot of progress with the dog, and she said, should I cancel the appointment with the behaviorist? And I said, you know what? You made the appointment. You want to spend the money. You should probably go check it out. And I said, but I do want to make some predictions. And I said, what they're going to do is they're going to tell you these like 5 things that I told you to do. They're going to tell you those same things. But then they're going to tell you the one thing that we did that was probably like the overarching, like, approach that made this work out and made improvement in your dog. They're going to tell you to never do that. And I said, don't tell them that you're training with me until the end of it. Yeah. And they did. And at the end of the appointment, my client came back in and she actually gave me the write-up. And the write-up was that using a chain training collar on the dog was probably why the dog got into all of this trouble. Yeah. And correction caused this problem. She agreed with every single thing that I had recommended. But then when the big reveal was made that we actually used a training collar that wasn't made of, lavender nylon or unicorn fur or whatever the hell they do, then it was, oh, that's what's wrong with you and your dog. And and I also guaranteed they would write a script for Prozac. And they did. They wrote a script for Prozac. So, I've always found it very ironic that these people who are so anti-aversive have no problem, and very consent-oriented and everything. No problem with putting your animal in a pharmaceutical straitjacket. That's cool. But God forbid you put a little piece of metal in there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Julia, I have a client here. This was some years ago, but she called me. We talked on the phone, made an appointment. I did not know that she had seen previously someone here in town who has this very expensive, very flashy website filled with the lists of the certifications and the seminars and the Prairie and the Ramirez and all the names, right? And she won't look at your dog, touch it, or get near it.
That's another one, yep.
Came to the house. The complaint that this brand new, never owned a dog before woman had was that her 4-month-old puppy was squeaking in his crate. And this other trainer, behaviorist, this is going to take a very, very long time to fix. It may not be fixable, and you may have to euthanize it.
Jesus.
Which this young woman was like understandably distressed by that. I know none of this. She calls me. I go to her house. I'm sitting there filling out my history, and a puppy is squeaking in his crate, and I couldn't hear what she was saying. So I just got up and walked over and hooked a couple fingers in the crate and shook it a little bit and set it down. And he was like, did I do that? Right? And he didn't make another sound the whole rest of the time. And that's when she started laughing, and she said, I had a person here last week who said what you just did was going to cost $3,000 to fix, and it may not be fixable, and you're probably going to have to euthanize your dog.
Every day.
We went on and put a utility title on that dog.
That's awesome.
He's all over my business page.
On purpose.
Yeah.
On purpose. Yeah. I just had an issue with an individual that came for a consult this last weekend with a dog who has been through prior training and so on and so forth. And basically, the minute I raised the specter of efforts to fix the dog's problems, because she has some mature adult female of a battle breed who has a, new to this home. And of course, the quote unquote rescue that they got the dog from did not prepare them adequately for this dog. And it's an individual who would prefer to love the dog than discipline the dog. So they went the positive only route. They went the behavioral route. And then she did an online route. And I actually made the comment, I really wish you'd have come to me first. because you would not have wasted 9 months of your life and this dog's life. But pointed some things out to her, and as soon as, like I said, I raised the specter of, yes, there's going to be effort involved. You will be committed. You will be required to make a commitment to change your behavior in order to affect the behavior of your dog. And that's when she mentally dipped out, because it didn't serve her narrative. It just didn't. And I'm like, okay, I can't help you then. I just can't help you. I prefer to work with people that want help. You don't want help. You want permission.
Linda, my favorite line of all time about that was when another trainer friend of mine said, if it was possible to pay somebody else to lose the weight for you, don't you think Oprah Winfrey would have done it already?
No shit. Oops.
So good.
That's good.
I was like, right? Who else has the means and the
Exactly.
desire and the, yeah.
Exactly. So we've been at this now for a while. We've been at it for over an hour and a half.
Okay, we're good.
I think it's time to make some closing statements. If the folks in the audience want to say something or ask a question of Michael or Jill or Julia or me, now is the time, or forever hold your peace. We have two, I think Insty's closed. I don't know if anyone was following us from there or not, but we still have some folks on YouTube and Facebook. Big River Canine Coach, you need a sidebar for our stories and experiences with behaviorists. Euthanize recommendations before mentioning training, not just one time. Oh yeah. I think all four of us collectively could come up with hundreds.
There's your research study.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like again, sometime in the future, behavioral euthanasia is something that absolutely needs to be discussed on a global level, because it impacts one of the things that impacts behavior is the woefully inappropriate placement of dogs from shelters and rescues. And these are decisions that have to be made before these people before the new demographic for dog ownership is I don't know, Gen Z from Gen Butthole, but basically people who have never owned dogs in their lifetimes, ever. Not even, raised in a family that had pets. They had no pets. They were apartment or condo dwellers and have never experienced pet life. And they've been indoctrinated for years now that the only thing you're allowed to do is to adopt from a shelter or a rescue. And they're getting these dogs that are dangerous, and people are getting killed. They're getting insidious diseases from pathogens from, third world countries overseas, yada, yada, yada. But that's a conversation for another time.
I actually want to loop back, though, to something that might be part of what Michael was talking about, was the legal ramifications. Many of these dogs that you just described, with the owners you just described, come here and they have a contract with the shelter that stipulates you will only use positive reinforcement techniques or force-free trainers. And I'm wondering, is there any angle, like legally, for those people that we have to look at? Because as Linda said, that's where the majority of these people are getting their dogs. Yeah. Those people are looked at as the authority, which is, pathetic. And then they have it in writing. I have people coming here, don't put our dog's picture on your webpage or your Facebook page. We don't want to use, a picture of our dog on your Facebook page. We're afraid somebody from the shelter will see it and take our dog back because the dog isn't wearing a harness or the dog is wearing a chain collar. And to me, that's a whole other angle that I didn't even think about till just now.
It's why I would never, ever live in a neighborhood that had a homeowners association.
Mm-hmm.
Where I put my trash cans, excuse me?
Yeah. Right.
Well,
it's a lot of dogs out there with that contract with them saying you can't use anybody other than our list of trainers.
Although the first Belgian I ever bought came on a sales contract from the breeder in Colorado that said I wouldn't do any kind of protection sports. but she lived in Colorado, and I lived at the time in Columbia, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Oh well. Oops.
Well, and the thing is we see that a lot too. I've actually been blacklisted from virtually every shelter and rescue in a 5-state area.
Congratulations.
And I'm okay with it. I'm glad, right? Because people call me, and it's like the very first thing out of their mouth is, my dog's a rescue. And I'm like, they have questions with aggression or issues with aggression. And basically it's like, they're like, what do you suggest? And I'll be honest with you. I think you should take the dog back.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all, said after, we're getting a pretty substantial amount of history about what's going on with the dog, so on and so forth, age, breed, how long they've had the dog, yada, yada, yada. And ultimately at this point, because we're dealing with a group of people who have no experience with dogs, have no experience with animals, period, who live in this Disney-fied universe of the peaceable kingdom, and they have this raging maniac that's trying to eat their, the 4-year-old's turtle, and all of a sudden it's a problem. It's like, well, have you heard of the thing called the internet? Have you gone to any of these forums? Facebook, right? There's all kinds of different places where you can go to actually acquire information. And this is something that I want to talk about, and Michael has actually done a really good job of it, is search engine optimization. Have you talked to our Lord Jesus Christ? But certainly when it comes to Google, the thing is, though, is when you go to search for dog training now, locally it's one way, regionally it's another way, nationally it's another way, right? And the reason why is because the search criterion, and this is something I find fascinating, search criterion changes, right? And there's a thing called Google Trends, and I absolutely encourage everyone to go to Google Trends and just start typing in keywords so that they know exactly what type of traffic is being driven to their sites and why, right? Therapy Dog International is so restricted that I no longer work with them. Yeah, there you go. But the thing is, though, is basically, and you can see, positive only or positive dog training or positive puppy training used to never be a search term, and now it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds and hundreds, and this is just locally, right? This is just, within this compact little region, hundreds and hundreds of searches a day for positive dog training, right? Where it never used to, just 5 years ago, it never used to register, right? So people are, and the thing is they see this stuff and they hear this stuff, but they have absolutely no comprehension of this stuff. Yeah. So when people call on the phone, the first thing out of their mouth is, do you use positive training? Oh, absolutely I do. Mm-hmm. Everything I do is positive. Everything I do is positive. And, then when you sit down with them and, when they ask what kind of collars do you use, it's like, I use a variety of different collars. What collar would you like to use? Right? Mm-hmm. So put the onus on them. And it's hard. it's getting, people are, the person I adopted my, $40,000 mini Aussie golden doodle thing said that I can't use anything but, fairy dust and unicorn farts to train my dog. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm sure I can help you find a trainer that suits your,
right,
your preferences, because I'm just not dealing with that personality type.
That's what that was what I had the other night. I laughed. And I won't get into detail other than to say, if you come here and tell me all the things you won't do, when you won't show up, and you bring me a geriatric member of I'd say largely one of the less trainable dogs out there, it's almost old enough to drink, and you want me to train that dog.
Yeah.
And I tell you that I think it's a little abusive. Like, you're not a good fit when you come back and tell me how you're not an abusive person. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of weird, disillusioned, delusional people out there when it comes to this stuff, and they're being fed that delusion. These people that I just saw were basically telling me all the limitations they were going to put on what I would do to help that dog and also a dog with a sensory problem. And they told me all the things they wouldn't be willing to do. And when I kind of, explained to them how things would actually have to work, they said, well, you're not a good fit for us. And I said, yes, you're right. I'm definitely not a good fit for you. And there's no amount of money to deal with that. And I know the sad thing is, I know they'll find somebody to enable them.
Yeah.
I know they'll find someone to hammer the check and enable those people.
Yep.
And when the young person who lives in that house gets bitten by one of those dogs, which is imminent, in my opinion, they won't ever remember that they sat across from me and I told them why it wouldn't be a good idea to do what they were doing. But
yep. And it's unfortunate. It's really, really sad. It's getting, common sense has I think we have collectively bred it out of the human race. I do. I think that it's becoming much more difficult to help these people understand. It's like I think the last 4 inquiries I've had have all been for dangerously aggressive dogs. I mean, we're not talking your, run-of-the-mill, fluffy little white dog that has issues with having its nails cut. We're talking sizable animals that have put serious holes in people. And I'm like, I can't help you if you don't want to be helped. At one point in time, you have to understand the large portion of the problem is your treatment of this dog and how you relate to this dog. It's not protecting you. It's not protecting anybody but itself. You have to stop thinking of it in terms of humans, right? This is not, and the relationships are just so out there. It's becoming, like Jill said, it's like, I'll give you the Dr. Phil answer, but I want the Dr. Phil paycheck. Yeah. So anyways, we got one. Let's see. Hold on. Tom, as you noted earlier, the majority of the people adopting dogs are from the rescues and shelters, and they are positing the all positive training crap, and then we have to undo all that. Yep. Undo that mindset because they have not educated themselves beforehand about having and training a dog. No, and they don't. And the thing that's really, really sad is y'all remember back when we were kids. I mean, we're all, folks of a certain age. Michael, I believe you're a little bit younger. Men keep better anyways. I hate y'all. But anyways, remember all the books about animals and animal relationships? Yeah. Jim Kajilgard, the Big Red series, Jack London, Call of the Wild, all of these books, right? Where are those books now? They're not getting written anymore, right? All the Disney movies, and say what you want about Disney movies, but man, I gotta tell you, when you watch the Disney movie, that was some real dog work.
Oh yeah,
that was some real dog work. And now it's cutaways, dogs, living dogs.
It was real dog work until the dogs started speaking in complete sentences in English. And when they started speaking in complete sentences in English, they went somewhere else.
Yeah, well, and the thing is it's I think that we need to kind of force a return to that.
Yeah.
No, we're removed from it. Everybody's removed from it. And it's not just, angry old woman shaking fist at cloud, although it is a lot over here. But it is. People are they're so removed from it. They want the dog to be this thing that it can't be, and they don't love it for being what it is. And that's, I think that's the tragedy, is you force this role on your dog to be all of these things that he can't be, and then the things that make him what he is, you want to warp and change and suppress, or not to be melodramatic, or kill. And you don't want to channel it in the way that would make sense to the dog. You'd rather just do what honors your ego or what honors your feelings, and
doesn't talk back and keeps all your secrets. Mm-hmm. It doesn't talk back and it keeps all your secrets. Oh, yeah. And I believe that the vast majority of people who are getting animals as opposed to engaging in meaningful relationships with other humans are afraid, or they just don't really want to put in that kind of effort. And I think that animals make it easy for them to not be lonely without having to make a vested effort. I think that at this point in time, relationships are with these things,
Mhm.
and what we can do and say from a distance so that we don't have to be emotionally involved.
Well, amen.
So, all right. So we're going to stop here because Michael looks like he's getting ready to fall asleep. Tomorrow's Monday, and I believe he has to work.
School night.
But
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for coming out with us tonight. I appreciate it. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Linda. I'll make a closing statement.
Sure.
If I'm not sure what dog trainers are out there that are watching, but I just have to say, like, I'm not against any. I'm for professional dog trainers, all professional dog trainers. I don't care what you're calling yourself right now. I think the issue is misinformation, and it's rarely the source is the professional dog trainer whose heart is in the right place. It's usually where the information is coming from. When we all pick up that phone, we all want to do the same thing. We want to help that owner. We want to improve their quality of life. That is the common denominator. No matter what they're calling you for, they want to be happier with their dog, right? And that's what our job is to make it a smooth process, to really understand what welfare, and it has to feel right in your heart, and if there is something out there like using a certain tool, and if you don't feel good about it, learn about it. Like, find who you do the reviews, find who you think is the best at it. You do not have to spend $10,000, I'm telling you, to learn how to use like an e-collar or something like that. I show how to use it completely for free on my YouTube, channel.
Yeah.
It's you got to stay away from the marketing and just know there's people out there that want to help for the right reasons. And you could, of course, pay money to someone to give you more one-on-one attention, but you at least got to get kind of like a starting point before you make a judgment. Don't get your education from someone who doesn't understand how to use something themselves, basically. And don't use something if you don't feel comfortable with it. But I believe if you communicate with a lot of dog trainers, you're going to find, don't judge by the tool, is like judge by the person. Like, there's really some people out there that are in it for the wrong reasons.
Lots.
And there's lots. And there's people that really make their decisions for welfare. And the way that I judge obedience training, right? And I'm all for, I love positive, training, is if to judge a trainer, this is how I judge a training process, is one, is their goal avoidance conditioning? Like, remember avoidance conditioning. Don't get set on punishment, all right? A good trainer understands avoidance conditioning. It means they know how to get a dog to a point where they don't need to get punished. It's an actual process. And the process should not be something they're embarrassed to show live on social media, right? Like, if a trainer can show their process, they're not embarrassed by it, and it leads to avoidance conditioning, which solves a welfare issue, lets that dog live, lets their dog enjoy their life, and living, even us, like, the world there's a lot of exciting things out there that we experience that involve in danger and understanding the world, and and confidence building, knowing that we can conquer. And it's something that you do together with the owner of the dog, and it should be a bonding experience. And every session, if the goal is, when you do that training session with the owner, do you feel good about it as a trainer? Is that owner enjoying the session? Is the dog enjoying the session? It does not mean there might not be something aversive that happens in the session, but overall, when you reflect, did they have a good time? Did they learn something? Did the dog overcome? Is the dog happy to see you come to do the lesson? It's just things to think about, right? Like, it's people can abuse the dog with anything. You can get rid of all these tools. People are going to abuse the dog. Everything in the UK got triggered by some police officers hanging and kicking a dog on a choke collar. You're not banning people's boots, or even, I don't think even choke collars are necessarily bad. Nothing to do with e-collars, nothing to do with prong collars, but it's just, it has to really be separated. So hang in there. If you feel like you're right, if you're being attacked, like have confidence. Like you're right. Like believe me, you're right. Don't be scared to fight. I put together a website, www.dogtraining.legal. Mostly, yeah, and I've gotten for sure very good people that are involved. I try to keep it like anonymous who's involved, but I'm feeling very, very confident that good things are going to happen. For dogs, for people, for professional dog trainers that are trying to follow what they love doing. It just really shouldn't be like that. All right. So Linda, I really want to thank you again for having me on, and Jill and Julia, it was just a pleasure being over here, and stay in touch.
We shall.
For sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
You guys take care. We'll talk
Have a
soon.
good one. All right.
You too.
Everybody.
See you soon.